That little girl just knocked the drink out of the most feared man in the city, and then she looked him in the eyes and called him daddy. I was standing near the center of the ballroom when it happened, surrounded by crystal chandeliers, polished marble, and people who knew better than to interrupt Ethan Callahan. At 34, Ethan had a reputation that made conversations soften whenever he entered a room. He wore a black suit, held a glass of whiskey in one hand, and listened while two businessmen discussed a deal in careful voices. I was there because my daughter Lily had begged me to come with her. She was 7, impatient, curious, and completely unimpressed by wealthy people. I had warned her 3 times to stay beside me. She promised. She lasted less than a minute. Suddenly, Lily slipped through the crowd. Lily, I called, but she was already running. Her white sneakers tapped rapidly against the marble floor. Ethan turned just as she reached him. She collided with his arm. His glass tipped. Amber liquid splashed across the floor, and the crystal landed with a sharp crack that silenced the room. I stopped breathing. Lily looked up at him. Ethan didn't move. He simply stared at her, his expression changing from irritation to something I couldn't understand. I hurried toward them, my face burning. I'm so sorry, I said. Lily, what did you do? My daughter didn't answer. She kept looking at Ethan. Then she whispered, You're him. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. Lily reached into the pocket of her little blue dress and pulled out a folded photograph. My stomach dropped. I had seen that photograph before. I had hidden it in a locked box for years. Ethan had never seen it. At least, I had believed he hadn't. Lily held the picture toward him with both hands. Mommy said I wasn't supposed to show anyone. I stepped forward quickly. Lily, give me that. But Ethan was already looking at the photograph. His face went completely still. The room seemed to disappear around us. He looked at the picture, then at me, then back at Lily. Where did you get this? His voice was quiet now. Too quiet. I reached for my daughter's hand. We're leaving. Ethan didn't stop me. He didn't need to. Something in his eyes told me that the moment he had seen that photograph, everything had changed. Lily squeezed my fingers and looked back at him. Then, in the innocent voice only a child could use, she said the one thing I had spent 7 years praying she would never say in front of him. Mommy, is that my daddy? Mommy, is that my daddy? The words seemed to hang in the air long after Lily said them. I felt every pair of eyes in the ballroom turn toward us, but I could only see Ethan Callahan. He was staring at my daughter as if the entire world had suddenly shifted beneath his feet. I reached for the photograph in Lily's hand. Give it to me, sweetheart. My voice came out softer than I intended. Lily looked between us, confused. But Mommy, you said I could keep it. Not here. I gently closed my fingers around hers and tried to pull her toward me. Ethan finally moved. He lowered his empty hand to his side and took one slow step closer. Claire. Hearing my name from him made my stomach tighten. I had never met Ethan before tonight. Not officially, not in person, but I knew his name. Everyone in Chicago seemed to know his name. I had heard it in conversations that stopped whenever I entered a room. I had seen his face in newspapers and business magazines. Ethan Callahan was the kind of man people described carefully, as though even a careless sentence could travel farther than they intended. You know me, he said. It was not a question. I swallowed. I know who you are. His eyes moved to Lily. And she knows who I am. She is 7, I said. She does not understand what she is saying. Lily immediately frowned. I do understand. Ethan looked at her. For the first time, the cold expression everyone talked about disappeared completely. He crouched down so that his eyes were level with hers. What is your name? Lily. Lily what? She glanced at me before answering. Lily Bennett. Ethan repeated the name under his breath. Then he looked at me again. Bennett. I nodded. That is my last name. And her father's? The question struck harder than it should have. I tightened my grip on Lily's hand. He is not part of our lives. Ethan's expression changed again. Why? Because that is private. He stood slowly. Around us, the ballroom had begun to fill with quiet whispers. I could feel people watching, waiting for the powerful man in the black suit to decide what happened next. But Ethan did not look at them. He looked only at the photograph. Where did you get this? He asked. It belonged to my mother, I said. It was the first lie I had told him that evening. Ethan seemed to notice. He always seemed to notice everything. Lily tugged gently on my sleeve. Mommy, why are you scared? I forced a smile. I am not scared. Ethan heard her. His eyes softened for just a moment. You are. I looked at him. You do not know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, he replied. But I know what fear looks like. Silence settled between us. Then Lily looked at Ethan again and asked, Did you know my mommy before I was born? I felt the blood drain from my face. Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked at me as if he had finally found the question he had been searching for. Claire, he said quietly, I think you and I need to talk. I think you and I need to talk. Ethan's words followed me as I led Lily away from the ballroom. I wanted distance. 10 feet. 20. Anything that would put a wall between my daughter and the questions I had spent 7 years avoiding. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter, lined with tall windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Rain traced thin lines down the glass, turning the city lights into blurred gold. Lily held my hand tightly. Mommy, she whispered. Why is he looking at me like that? I looked down at her. Because you surprised him. With the picture? Yes. But you said he did not know about us. My steps stopped. I closed my eyes for 1 second. I had forgotten how honest 7-year-olds could be. Ethan had followed us into the hallway. I could hear his footsteps behind me, steady and unhurried. Claire. I turned around. Please do not follow us. He stopped several feet away. Then answer one question. No. You do not even know what I am going to ask. I know exactly what you are going to ask. His eyes moved to Lily. Then tell me the truth. I felt my throat tighten. Lily looked between us, completely unaware of the history hiding behind our silence. Ethan reached inside his jacket and pulled out his phone. He opened something, then held the screen toward me. It was an old photograph. A woman stood beside him, smiling beneath the summer sun. She had light brown hair and the same pale blue eyes Lily had inherited. My heart stumbled. I knew that woman. Where did you get that? Ethan asked. I could barely speak. That is my sister. He watched my face carefully. Her name was Emily Callahan. I looked at Lily, then back at him. Emily gave me the photograph years ago. Ethan's expression hardened with confusion. Emily died 8 years ago. I know. Then how did you know her? I could not answer. Not here. Not with Lily listening. Ethan seemed to understand. He lowered his voice. Claire, I have spent years trying to understand what happened to my family. Every answer led nowhere. Tonight, my niece runs into me, shows me a photograph, and suddenly you are standing here. She is not your niece. The words escaped before I could stop them. Ethan went completely still. Lily looked up at me. Mommy, I forced myself to breathe. We need to go home. Ethan took 1 step forward, then stopped himself. Claire, I am not trying to frighten you. Then let us leave. I will let you leave. His voice softened. But I need you to understand something. I do not care about the spilled drink. I do not care about the photograph. I care about why a 7-year-old girl looked at me like she already knew me. Lily suddenly pulled the photograph from my hand. She studied it, then pointed at Ethan's face. That is the man Mommy said disappeared. My heart stopped. Ethan stared at me. Disappeared? I said nothing. Lily looked at him and added quietly. Mommy told me he was never coming back. Ethan's eyes met mine, and for the first time that night, I saw something behind his power. Hurt, confusion, and a question neither of us could keep avoiding. That is the man Mommy said disappeared. Lily's words followed me down the hallway, each one heavier than the last. I reached for her hand and gently pulled her closer, but Ethan was still standing behind us, staring at me as though I had just opened a door he had spent years trying to find. Who disappeared? He asked. His voice was calm, but I could hear the strain beneath it. I looked toward the rain-covered windows. Someone from my past. Someone connected to my sister? I said nothing. Ethan waited. He did not raise his voice. He did not demand an answer. Somehow, that made it harder to keep pretending. Emily was my friend, I finally said. A long time ago. His eyes narrowed slightly. You said she was your sister. I said that because Lily was listening. He glanced at my daughter. Lily was now studying the photograph again, tracing the edge with one small finger. Emily gave this to me, I continued. She asked me to keep it safe. Ethan looked at the photograph. Why? Because she believed someone was looking for her. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Ethan went quiet. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the city. Lily leaned against my side. Mommy, you said we should not talk about this. I know, sweetheart. Ethan heard every word. Why did you have to hide? He asked. I looked directly at him. Because Emily was afraid. Of whom? I never knew. That was the truth. At least, most of it. Ethan stepped closer, but kept a respectful distance. You knew my sister. You had this photograph. You knew about me. And you told Lily that I was never coming back. Because that was what I believed. Why? I swallowed. Because 7 years ago, Emily came to my apartment with a newborn baby. Ethan's face changed. His eyes moved slowly toward Lily. A newborn? I nodded. She was exhausted. She was frightened. She asked me to take care of the baby for a few days. Ethan's voice dropped. And then, she never came back. Silence. Lily looked up at me. You said she went away. I did. Ethan looked at Lily again. How old was she when you took her in? A few weeks. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to organize 1,000 thoughts at once. Then he opened them and looked at me. Claire, where is the rest of the photograph? My heart sank. What do you mean? The picture you showed me tonight is cut. I stared at him. He was right. The photograph had been trimmed along one edge. I had never questioned why. Ethan took out his phone again and showed me another image. It was the same photograph, but complete. Beside Emily stood a man whose face had been carefully removed from the picture I kept. My breath caught. Who was that? I whispered. Ethan looked at me. That is the question I have been asking for 7 years. Lily suddenly reached for my hand. Mommy, she whispered. Why is that man holding the baby? I looked at the photograph, then at Ethan, and for the first time, I understood that the secret was not only about who Lily's father was. It was about why someone had made sure Ethan never knew she existed. Because someone made sure Ethan never knew she existed. I could barely hear my own voice after saying it. The rain continued tapping against the windows, soft and steady, while the ballroom behind us slowly returned to normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. Ethan stared at the photograph on his phone. Claire, I need you to tell me everything you remember. I looked at Lily. She was watching us with the serious expression she always wore when adults were talking about something they thought she could not understand. Not here, I said. Ethan nodded immediately. My private office is upstairs. No, he paused. Then where? I hesitated. A quiet place. He glanced toward one of the hotel staff members and quietly asked for a private sitting room. A few minutes later, we were inside a small room overlooking Michigan Avenue. Lily sat on a velvet chair with a glass of apple juice, completely unaware of how much her life had changed in the last hour. Ethan placed the photograph on the table between us. Start with Emily. I folded my hands in my lap. 7 years ago, Emily came to my apartment just before sunrise. She was carrying Lily. She looked exhausted, but she kept saying she was fine. What did she tell you? She said she needed somewhere safe for the baby. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on me. Did she say who Lily's father was? I shook my head. She said his name would put us in danger. Ethan's expression tightened. My name? I did not know. But you know now. I only recognized you tonight. He studied me for a long moment. Then why did Lily recognize me? I looked at my daughter. Because of the photograph. Ethan leaned back. The photograph she carried tonight was not the one Emily gave you. I frowned. What do you mean? There was another copy. He opened an old photograph on his phone. It showed Emily standing beside a younger Ethan. She was holding a baby wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. My breath caught. Lily had been wrapped in the same blanket the night Emily brought her to me. That is Lily, I whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. I think it is. Lily climbed down from the chair and walked toward us. She looked at the photograph. That is me. Ethan looked at her. Something softened in his face. Yes, sweetheart. I think it might be. Lily pointed to the man standing beside Emily. And that is you. Ethan did not answer. He looked at me instead. Claire, did Emily ever leave you anything else? I remembered the small wooden box hidden at the back of my closet. The box I had promised never to open. My fingers went cold. Yes. Ethan waited. She left a box. Where is it? At my apartment. Lily looked between us. What is inside? I stood slowly. I do not know. That was not entirely true. I had always known there was a letter inside. I had simply been afraid to read it. Ethan rose as well. Then we need to see it. I shook my head. I need to do this myself. He looked at me for several seconds before nodding. All right. Then Lily quietly took my hand. Mommy, I think you should open it. I looked down at her innocent face. For 7 years, I had protected her from a secret she had never asked to carry. Now, for the first time, I wondered if keeping the secret had protected her at all. For 7 years, I had been afraid of what was inside that box. I never imagined I would be opening it with the man who might be Lily's father standing beside me. The drive back to my apartment felt strangely quiet. Ethan followed in a separate car, giving me the space he had promised, while I sat in the passenger seat of my old sedan with Lily beside me. Rain blurred the windshield, and the city lights stretched across the glass like pale ribbons. Lily was unusually quiet. She kept the photograph in her lap, holding it carefully with both hands. "Mommy," she finally whispered, "are you mad at me?" I turned toward her. "No, sweetheart. Never." I did not mean to tell him. I smiled sadly. "I know." She looked down at the picture. "I just thought he looked like me." My heart tightened. I had noticed it too. The shape of her eyes. The quiet way she studied people. Even the small crease that appeared between her eyebrows whenever she was confused. Things I had always attributed to Emily. Maybe I had been wrong. When we reached my apartment building, Ethan was waiting near the entrance. He stood beneath the awning, his dark coat dotted with rain. Lily looked through the window and waved. Ethan actually smiled. It was small, almost uncertain, but it was there. Upstairs, I unlocked the door and went straight to the closet. The wooden box sat behind a stack of winter blankets. I pulled it out and placed it on the kitchen table. Ethan stood several feet away. He did not touch it. "You said you never opened it," he said. I did not. "Why?" I looked at the old brass clasp. "Because Emily asked me not to." Lily climbed onto a chair beside the table. "Maybe she wanted us to open it now." I looked at Ethan. He nodded once. I opened the clasp. Inside was a faded envelope, a small silver key, and a photograph. My fingers trembled as I picked up the photograph. Emily was smiling at the camera. Beside her stood Ethan. They looked younger, happier. And in Emily's arms was a tiny baby wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. Lily leaned closer. "That is me." Ethan stared at the picture for a long moment. "Yes," he whispered. I turned the photograph over. There were 6 handwritten words on the back. My breath caught. "He deserves to know the truth." Ethan looked at me. "Who wrote that?" "Emily." I opened the envelope. Inside was a single letter, folded twice. The handwriting was unmistakable. I began reading aloud. "Claire, if you are reading this, then something happened that I prayed would never happen. You may believe I abandoned Lily. I did not. I left because I believed keeping her away from Ethan was the only way to protect her." Ethan closed his eyes. I continued. "Ethan never knew about the child. That was my decision, and I will carry the responsibility for it. But there is something else you must know." My voice faltered. Lily reached for my hand. Ethan looked at me. "Keep reading." I unfolded the final page. The next sentence was underlined twice. "The man Ethan trusts most knows Lily exists." The room went silent. Ethan's expression changed instantly. "Who?" I looked down at the letter. At the bottom of the page was a name I had never seen before. And when Ethan read it over my shoulder, the color drained from his face. The name at the bottom of the letter was Victor Hale. I had never heard it before, but Ethan had. He stared at those 2 words as if they had reopened a door he had spent years trying to keep closed. "Victor," he whispered. Lily looked up at him. "Who is Victor?" Ethan did not answer immediately. He folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. "He was my father's closest advisor," he finally said. "And for most of my adult life, he was the man I trusted to handle everything I could not." I looked at the letter again. Emily said he knew about Lily. Ethan nodded slowly. Then Emily was afraid of him. "Why?" I asked. Ethan looked toward the rain-covered window. "Because Victor knew things about my family that nobody else knew. He knew about Emily. He knew about me. And if this letter is real, he knew about Lily before I did." Lily quietly reached for the silver key inside the box. "What does this open?" she asked. I had almost forgotten about it. I took the key from her small hand and studied it. There was a tiny number engraved on the metal. 7. Ethan noticed it too. 7, he said. The year Lily was born. My stomach tightened. "Do you know what it opens?" He shook his head. "Not yet." Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen and his expression changed. "It is Victor." I felt a chill run through me. Ethan answered without saying anything. A calm older man's voice came through the speaker. "Ethan, I heard you had an interesting evening." Ethan looked at me. "How did you hear about it?" There was a brief silence. Chicago is a small city when you know the right people. Ethan's voice became quieter. "Did you know Emily had a daughter?" Another pause. "Why would you ask me that?" Ethan looked at the letter on the table. "Because she named you." The line went silent. Lily leaned closer to me. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Finally, Victor spoke. Ethan, you should not be digging into the past. Ethan's eyes hardened. That is not an answer. Some things were buried for a reason. Who was the man in the photograph? Victor did not respond. Ethan asked again. Who was standing beside Emily and the baby? This time, the silence lasted longer. Then Victor said something that made my heart race. You really should ask Claire what she remembers. The call ended. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. I stared at him. How does he know my name? Ethan looked at Lily, then at the old photograph. That is what I intend to find out. He picked up the silver key, and I think this may tell us where to start. Lily suddenly pointed toward the photograph. Mommy. I looked down. Her small finger was resting on a tiny detail near the corner. A number was written there in faded ink. 7. Ethan noticed it too. He turned the photograph over, and beneath Emily's handwriting was another message I had never seen. 4 words. Ask him about the hospital. Ethan looked at me. What hospital? I shook my head. I do not know. Lily suddenly spoke from beside us. I do. We both turned toward her. She looked frightened for the first time that night. Emily took me there before she disappeared. I do. Lily's voice was so quiet that for a second I wondered if I had imagined it. Then she pointed toward the photograph again. Emily took me there before she disappeared. Ethan crouched beside her. Do you remember the name of the hospital? Lily nodded. It had a big blue sign. I looked at Ethan. He looked back at me. Neither of us spoke. Then Lily added, Mommy was crying that day. My chest tightened. Sweetheart, I was not with you then. Lily shook her head. Not you. Emily. Ethan stood slowly. How do you remember that? Lily looked at him as if the answer were obvious. She told me to remember the blue sign. Ethan turned toward me. We need to find that hospital. I grabbed my coat. I am coming. Claire, you do not have to. My daughter remembers being there. I am not staying behind. Ethan nodded. 20 minutes later, we were driving through the rain toward the north side of the city. Lily sat between us in the back seat, holding the old photograph. She had fallen quiet again. Every few minutes, she looked through the window as if searching for something familiar. There, she suddenly said. That street. Ethan slowed the car. Are you sure? Yes. We followed her directions until the buildings became older and the streets quieter. Then we saw it. A small medical center with a faded blue sign above the entrance. My hands tightened around my coat. This is it? I asked. Lily nodded. I remember the sign. Ethan parked across the street. We entered the lobby together. The receptionist looked up. Can I help you? Ethan showed her the photograph. We are looking for records from 7 years ago. She studied it, then shook her head. Those records are archived. Can we access them? Only with proper authorization. Ethan nodded and stepped aside. For once, he did not try to use his influence. He simply asked what we needed to do. While the receptionist checked the system, Lily walked toward a hallway. I followed her. She stopped beside an old framed photograph of the hospital staff. Emily stood here, she whispered. I looked at the picture. There were dozens of people. Nurses, doctors, volunteers. Then I saw him. A younger Victor Hale stood near the edge of the group. My breath caught. Ethan came up beside me. Victor. He stared at the photograph. He was here. A nurse approached us. She was older, with silver hair and kind eyes. She looked at the photograph, then at Lily. Her expression changed. That child, she whispered. Ethan turned toward her. You remember her? The nurse hesitated. I remember the woman carrying her. Emily, I asked. She nodded. She came here late one evening. She was frightened, but she kept saying the baby had to be protected. Ethan's voice softened. Did she say from whom? The nurse looked toward the lobby. She said she was afraid of someone inside her own family. Ethan went still. Who? The nurse opened her mouth, but before she could answer, she looked at the silver key in my hand. Her face changed completely. Where did you get that? I held it up. Emily left it for us. The nurse took a slow breath. Then she expected you to come back. She reached beneath the desk and pulled out a small envelope. She told me to give this to Lily if anyone ever came looking. Lily stared at the envelope. Her name was written across the front in Emily's handwriting. Ethan looked at me. I looked at Lily. Then the nurse whispered, there is one thing you should know before she opens it. Emily did not leave this hospital alone. Emily did not leave this hospital alone. The nurse's words made the hallway feel suddenly smaller. I looked at the envelope in her hand, then at Lily, who was staring at her own name written across the front. Ethan stood beside me, completely still. Who was with her? He asked. The nurse hesitated. A man. Victor? I asked. She looked at Ethan. Yes. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Lily reached for the envelope. Can I open it? I nodded. Her fingers carefully broke the seal. Inside was a small letter and another photograph. Lily pulled out the photograph first. It showed Emily sitting in a hospital chair, holding a tiny baby. Beside her stood Victor Hale. But there was someone else in the background. A younger Ethan. My breath caught. Ethan took the photograph gently. I was here, he whispered. I do not remember this. The nurse nodded. You were unconscious in another room after an accident. Victor told us you were being transferred. Ethan looked at her. Why would he tell you that? Because he was handling everything. He said Emily had asked him to protect the child. Lily looked at the photograph again. But Mommy said Emily was scared. The nurse's eyes softened. She was. I opened the letter. The first line was written directly to Lily. My sweet girl, if you are reading this, then you are old enough to know that none of this was your fault. My eyes filled with tears. I continued. Your father did not abandon you. He did not know you existed. I was told he would never forgive me if I stayed, and I believed the person who told me that. Ethan looked at Victor's name written on the previous page. His face was filled with disbelief. Keep reading, he whispered. The next sentence made my hands tremble. Victor told me Ethan had chosen his family over us. He showed me papers that made me believe Ethan wanted nothing to do with my child. Ethan shook his head. That was a lie. The nurse looked down. Emily came back here months later. She asked about you, Ethan. He looked at her sharply. When, 7 years ago, she wanted to tell you the truth. What happened? The nurse took a slow breath. Victor arrived before she could leave. Lily squeezed my hand. Where did Emily go? The nurse looked at the little girl. She left a message. I unfolded the final page. Only one sentence remained. Tell Ethan I never stopped loving him. And tell Lily that I was trying to come home. Ethan turned away, pressing one hand against the window. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. Lily walked toward him. She stopped beside him and quietly reached for his hand. Ethan looked down at her. I am sorry, he whispered. Lily shook her head. You did not know. He knelt beside her. No, I did not. She studied his face for a long moment, then asked the question that changed everything. Can I call you Dad? Ethan's expression broke into the smallest, most human smile I had ever seen on his face. If you want to. Lily nodded. I do. I watched them standing together beneath the hospital lights, and suddenly I understood the real secret hidden inside that old photograph. It was never only about who Lily's father was. It was about how easily a family could be separated by one lie, and how much courage it took to finally tell the truth.